The first thing I noticed wasn't pain. It was silence, not the gentle kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket, but the cold, deliberate silence of abandonment. I opened my eyes to the hum of fluorescent lights above me. My mouth was dry, my throat burned like sandpaper, and when I tried to speak, nothing came out. I blinked slowly, my body heavy from whatever cocktail of anesthesia they'd used, and turned my head mechanical, disoriented, toward the visitor chair in the corner of the room. It was empty, perfectly empty, tucked in as if no one had ever been there at all. No flowers, no balloons, no notes, no voice outside the curtain asking, "How's she doing?" I reached for the call button, my fingers trembling from weakness more than fear. A nurse came in. She was young, brisk, clipboard in hand, voice sweet but distant, like someone trained to care but not feel. She checked my vitals, adjusted the 4. "You're awake," she said as if surprised. "That was a tough one. We weren't sure when you'd come to." I nodded slightly, still unable to find my voice, but my eyes begged the question. She paused, lips parting like she almost forgot something. "Your family was here," she added. "They left a few hours after surgery. Said they'd check back in tomorrow." A smile brushed her mouth, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her tone was clipped, practiced, detached, and suddenly I wasn't cold from the 4 or the sterile room anymore. I was cold from that sentence, from what it meant, from how easily she said it, like it was normal, expected. When she left, the silence folded over me again, heavier now, weighted with something I didn't want to name. I looked around the room, blinking through the fog. The ceiling tiles above me were chipped in one corner. The air smelled of antiseptic and fading carnations, and the only sound was the steady rhythm of machines pretending they were company. I turned toward the whiteboard near the door. Someone had written in green marker, "Expected visitors. Mom, Tuesday?" Tuesday, with a question mark. Not a name, not a plan, a guess. That tiny curl of ink burned more than the stitches in my side. It told me everything. Told me I was an afterthought, an optional event on someone's calendar. I tried not to let it sink in. Not yet. But the truth was already rooting itself somewhere beneath the morphine. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just one bad day. This was familiar, only now it was undeniable. On the tray table beside me, my phone blinked once, low battery. I picked it up, opened my messages. Nothing from my mother. Nothing from my sister. Just the last text from 2 nights ago. "You'll do great, don't worry." I stared at it, typed a reply, deleted it. There's something uniquely cruel about knowing you survived surgery only to realize no one was waiting for you to wake up. Outside the window, dusk was settling over Portland, smearing the sky in bruised lavender and ash. I turned away. There was no comfort in the sky tonight. Not when I was lying in a hospital bed, stitched and sore, and the people who brought me into this world had already decided I wasn't worth staying for. The knock came late the next morning. It wasn't the soft, absent-minded kind from a nurse. It was sharper, measured. When I looked up, a man stood in the doorway with a lanyard clipped to his belt and a tablet cradled in one arm. His shirt was too crisp for patient care. I knew the type before he even opened his mouth. "Ms. Harper," he asked, already stepping in. "Just here to verify some billing details before final processing." I blinked. Billing. He smiled gently, like I'd asked what a spoon was. "There were a few irregularities tied to your insurance profile. Nothing to worry about. Just want to confirm the payment source for one of the charges." He tapped on his screen. "This one here, $6,518. Processed the morning after your surgery. It went through successfully, but the back end flagged a signature mismatch." I sat up a little straighter. "A mismatch." "It was paid via a credit account linked to your name," he continued. "Joint line. Primary holder, Elaine Harper. Supplemental card holder, Marjorie Harper." The name hit harder than I expected. My mother hadn't just used my information. She'd revived something that should have been buried. My head buzzed. "I haven't used that account in years," I said slowly. "I thought I closed it." He gave the kind of shrug that said he'd heard it before. It may have been reactivated under a temporary medical credit provision. Sometimes, if a supplemental user has access to the original application data, his voice faded as my eyes drifted to the printout he handed me. It was thick, pages of itemized hospital charges, imaging, anesthesia, post-op care. At the end, under signature on file, was my name. Except it wasn't. From a distance, it looked like mine. Same swooping E, same vaguely rushed Harper. But the K was open at the top. Mine had always closed, a tight loop like a fishhook facing left. This one curved wrong. And the T in Harper was slashed in a way I hadn't written since college. I flipped back to the intake form I remembered signing before surgery. My actual signature was in the system too. It didn't match. Not even close. The address on the billing statement? My mother's house. The one I hadn't lived in since I was 27. The one where she still insisted on forwarding important mail for me. The one she swore was just easier for taxes, for banks, for emergencies. I looked up. The man was still explaining things, options for appeal, how to request a formal review. But I wasn't really listening anymore, because somewhere beneath the polite tone and technical language, I understood what had happened. They hadn't just left me in the hospital. They had signed my name, charged my account, and walked away with a plan already in motion. And I had been sedated, bleeding, hooked up to machines, while someone else decided what my signature meant. That night, I lay awake long after the hallway lights dimmed, staring at the monitor beside my bed. It blinked back at me, steadily, impersonally, like it couldn't care less whose name paid for its electricity. And somewhere between the beep of my heart rate and the hiss of the 4, I realized the real injury wasn't the one stitched into my abdomen. It was the one signed on paper. The idea came not from panic, but from a stray sentence. A night nurse was helping me to sit up, her hands gentle but efficient, her badge flashing each time she moved. As she adjusted my 4, she mentioned almost offhandedly, "They've been cracking down on orderlies taking extra breaks. Cameras caught one last week sneaking off again." Cameras. I asked, my voice still raspy. "Pretty much everywhere now," she said, "especially in post-op zones. Liability and all." She moved on to straighten the tray table, but the word stuck with me. Cameras, waiting rooms, liability. That night, when the morning shift began, I asked to speak to a hospital administrator. It took 2 hours and 3 forms, but finally a woman with a tight ponytail and a colder smile arrived with a flash drive and a phrase I'll never forget. "Per policy, patient-requested footage is available for review on site only." They walked me, slowly, into a windowless room with a screen already set up. She inserted the drive. "This is time-stamped the night of your surgery," she said. I leaned forward as the footage began to play. There they were, Marjorie and Savannah Harper, sitting in the waiting area like they had just come in from brunch. Savannah sipped a latte, her nails perfect, scrolling on her phone without even glancing up. My mother adjusted her coat, nodded at someone off screen, and reached for the clipboard a nurse handed her. She signed it. I watched it happen in real time, watched her commit the moment like it was just another item on a list. Not a pause, not a blink, not even a glance toward the corridor that led to me. 45 minutes after I was wheeled into surgery, they stood up. Marjorie slung her purse over her shoulder. Savannah pulled her coat on with practiced ease. They left. No hesitation, no backward glance. No question for the nurse behind the desk. Not even a nod. They didn't leave because they were scared or overwhelmed or tired. They left because they could. Back in my hospital room, I sat in that same bed, but now the silence felt different. Heavier, not just from absence, but from choice. I stared at the walls like they owed me answers, but the white paint only stared back. Was I inconvenient? Too complicated? Too much effort to love? Or worse? Had I always been expendable? My chest tightened, not with rage, not yet, but with a kind of ache I hadn't named before. An ache that said, this wasn't the first time, just the clearest one. Maybe they didn't leave because they stopped loving me. Maybe they left because loving me never mattered as much as convenience. That night, the nurse brought me tea and didn't say anything about the tears I didn't bother to hide. She just placed the cup beside me and left. And in that simple gesture, quiet, wordless, I felt more humanity than I had from my own blood. The next morning, I asked for a printout of my full billing record. I wanted to see every line, every signature, every place my name had been dragged across a page without me. And I wanted to trace it all the way back to the moment I stopped being a daughter and became a signature on a form. It was sometime around noon when the hospital discharged me. No one came to pick me up. A nurse wheeled me to the curb, handed me a folder stuffed with aftercare instructions, and gave me the kind of polite smile that means, "We did our part, now the rest is yours." I sat there in my coat, still smelling faintly of disinfectant, my bag on my lap, and nothing in front of me but the cold sidewalk and February air. I tried calling my mother. Straight to voicemail. My father, Russell. Let the phone ring until it cut off on its own. No text. No reply. Just silence. I booked a rideshare. The driver didn't talk, and I didn't offer anything. His car smelled faintly of mint gum and cheap vinyl. Portland passed in gray slush outside the window. Wet streets, salt-stained sidewalks, people carrying groceries or hurrying under umbrellas. It all looked too normal for what I'd just walked out of. When the car pulled up to my old house, Marjorie's house, I felt nothing. No dread. No comfort. Just a dull, hollow echo of a place I used to believe was mine. The lawn was tidy but impersonal, like someone had trimmed it just enough to pass judgment. Savannah's Tesla sat in the driveway, gleaming under the overcast sky. Silver gray, not a fingerprint on it, not even a drop of water. A red ribbon still lay curled in the passenger seat, like the celebration hadn't even ended. I walked slowly to the front door and rang the bell. Nothing. I waited. Rang again. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone, typed, "I'm outside." Sent it to Marjorie. The reply came fast. 4 words. "Can't host right now. Sorry." Then another. "Savannah is resting. Please understand." I stared at the screen, not moving, not breathing. My stitches still pulled at my side. My fingers ached from gripping the bag. But it was my chest that felt like something had caved in. I stepped back. There was a folded note tucked behind the storm door. My name was written across it in Marjorie's looping script. The kind of handwriting that looked elegant until you understood what it really said. I opened it. "Stay with a friend. We're a little full here. You'll figure it out." She'd added a small heart at the end. A heart. Like that made it tender. I sat down on the cold concrete step and opened my phone again, not even knowing what I was looking for. Maybe some proof that I'd imagined it all. Maybe some trace of kindness. But what I found hit harder than any confirmation could have. The family group chat. Dozens of messages. None to me, but one from 4 days ago stood out. Savannah had written, "Don't tell her about this weekend. She always brings tension." Marjorie had replied, "Agreed. She's too sensitive." That word again. Sensitive. They always said it like it was a flaw. Like feeling deeply made me dangerous. Or worse, dramatic. I took a screenshot. I didn't even know why. Maybe to prove later that I hadn't made it up. That I hadn't exaggerated. That this was real. And then, because I couldn't stop myself, I opened Instagram. The first post on my feed? Savannah. Her hair perfectly curled. Her makeup flawless. Standing in the driveway I had just been locked out of. In front of the same Tesla. Holding a coffee cup and smiling like the world had handed her a reward for simply existing. The caption read, "When your parents believe in you, this is what happens. Hashtag grind, hashtag grateful, hashtag Gifted, no entitled, gifted. Not entitled. I felt my stomach turn. It wasn't just the car. It was what the car had been paid for with. And it had my name on it. I don't know how long I sat on that porch. The cold eventually numbed my fingers, but the heat burning inside my chest didn't fade. I watched the sky shift from gray to darker gray, then finally to the shade of night that never quite becomes black in a city full of streetlights. I texted her again. I'm outside. I just had surgery. I have nowhere to go. The screen showed read. And then nothing. No reply. No typing dots. Just the clean, sterile confirmation that she had seen my message and decided it didn't matter. I stood up slowly, every movement pulling at the stitches across my abdomen. I made my way down the walkway with my small suitcase trailing behind me like some failed metaphor. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just kept walking. It wasn't until I reached the corner that I realized. I wasn't even surprised. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This was the same pattern, just finally clear enough to stop pretending it wasn't real. I remembered the Thanksgiving when I set the table alone while Savannah took selfies with the turkey. The birthdays when I got text messages instead of calls. The time I drove 6 hours home from college and they forgot to leave the porch light on. And still, I had always made excuses. She's busy. She didn't mean it. It's not personal. Don't be so sensitive. But now I had receipts. Literal ones. I checked my phone again, almost by habit. And that's when it buzzed. A new voicemail. Unknown number. 7 words in the transcript preview. You need to see what I found. I hesitated, then hit play. The voice was familiar, softer than I remembered. It took me a second before I placed it. Danielle Green. A woman I hadn't seen in years. We used to work together when I was still an intern, fetching coffee and building presentations no one read. Her voice trembled, just slightly. Elaine, I don't know if this is something you want to see, but I think you need to. Attached was a link. No context. No explanation. Just a video. I was in Becca's spare room by then, my best friend's tiny studio on the east side. I had dragged myself there with nothing but a hospital bag and shame. She had offered me her air mattress without asking a single question. I sat cross-legged in my sweatpants, still smelling faintly of antiseptic, and tapped the link. The video loaded. It was Savannah, in the driveway, again. Only this time it was filmed professionally. Her hair glistened in soft light. She wore a slouchy designer sweater that had probably cost more than my entire week's salary. And behind her, gleaming like a trophy, was the Tesla, a big red bow on the hood. She laughed, tossed her hair, and said into the camera, "When your parents believe in you, this is what happens." Then she blew a kiss. I watched frozen. She leaned into the driver's seat, panned across the touchscreen, and added, "Hard work pays off." Hard work. My jaw locked. My vision blurred. I paused the video and rewound. On the key fob in her hand, etched in tiny silver letters, was a name. Elaine Harper. Mine. My hand shook. I pulled up the hospital invoice again. Line by line, dollar for dollar. $65,000. The Tesla on her feed? Same model. Same custom trim. $64,900. This wasn't a coincidence. It was math. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the pain, though there was plenty of that, but because my brain wouldn't stop assembling the pieces. Each thought connected like magnets. Each memory suddenly sharper, reframed in the glow of betrayal. By morning, I was already at my laptop. I opened the bank's website, fingers trembling slightly as I logged in. The account that had been closed was active. A new credit line had been opened under my name, and listed beneath it, clear as daylight, was a supplemental card. Marjorie Harper. The billing address matched hers, not mine. The agent on the other end of the line confirmed it politely, like we were discussing a lost password. "We see the charge processed 2 days post-surgery," she said. "Would you like to file a fraud claim?" I opened my mouth, then whispered, "Yes." I think I need to. But it wasn't just the money anymore. It was the orchestration, the strategy. They had waited until I was unconscious, sedated, helpless. They hadn't reacted to an emergency, they had planned for it. They used the moment my guard was lowest to slip their hands into everything I had spent years trying to build. The signature on the Tesla documents, it matched the one they used at the hospital, nearly perfect. But not mine. I remembered once, 5 years ago, I gave my mother power of attorney for a car accident. Minor. Just a precaution, she'd said. In case anything happens. She said it like she was protecting me. I thought she was. Instead, she'd kept those documents, copied them, stored them, weaponized them. I dug through my storage box at Becca's, searching for anything I still had in writing. My original bank application, old tax forms, the college grant paperwork I'd signed when I was 18. And there it was, my signature, delicate, nervous, real. Underneath, in blue ink, joint access granted to Marjorie Harper. She'd insisted back then it was just for emergencies. No more emergencies, I thought. No more loopholes. No more just in case. I opened a new folder, labeled it in thick marker, personal misuse verified. Inside, I began printing screenshots of Savannah's Tesla video, my hospital invoice, the credit line statement, the email from billing showing the signature mismatch, a dated text message where Marjorie had once written, "Don't worry, I'll handle all the paperwork." A message from Savannah years ago, "What's yours is partly ours, right?" I used to think she was being playful. Turns out, she was just being honest. That afternoon, I called Desmond. He had been in my law school orientation group. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but he picked up on the second ring. I didn't waste time. "I need someone who understands identity misuse," I said, "and family." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Come by. Bring everything." And so I did. 2 hours later, we sat at his kitchen table, my folder between us. He flipped through every page, slow and deliberate, pausing occasionally to underline something or ask a question. When he reached the hospital signature, he frowned. When he saw the title to the Tesla, he cursed under his breath. Then he looked up and said, "You've got something real here. Identity fraud, unauthorized transfer, maybe even coercion, depending on how she got the documents." I nodded once. I felt nothing like victory, only clarity, the kind of clarity that makes it impossible to go back. That night, I stayed up taping each document to the wall. I drew red circles around key names, annotated timestamps, created a trail, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood. If they were going to take everything from me, then the very least I could do was name it. I didn't announce anything at first. No public accusation. No confrontation. Just a quiet post on my private profile. A photo of the hospital invoice, with a red circle around the signature line. The caption was simple. She said I was lying. "Here's what the truth looks like." I didn't expect it to spread, but it did. Within hours, old coworkers, high school classmates, even cousins I hadn't heard from in years began messaging me. Not to gossip, but to say they'd seen signs too. Little things that hadn't made sense before. Odd charges, strange messages, silent moments where they now realized they'd been complicit, even by accident. Someone reposted my screenshot to a local forum. Another copied it to a legal subreddit. And just like that, the silence my family had built around me cracked. And it kept cracking. By the next morning, Savannah went live. I watched from the corner of Becca's kitchen, coffee going cold in my hand. Her face filled the screen. Perfect lighting, soft filter, false emotion blooming like a theater cue. "I'm being attacked," she said, her voice trembling just enough. "People are making up lies about me, about our family, about the Tesla." She sniffed, wiped under her eye. But behind her on her dresser was the lamp. My lamp. The one I dropped during finals week sophomore year. The one with the scuffed ceramic base and the crooked shade that never sat right. I had bought it for our shared dorm, and when she moved out, she took it without asking. Now it sat glowing in the corner of her video, like it had no idea it was part of a lie. The comments were fast and mixed. "You don't deserve this. Haters gonna hate." But then, wait, isn't that Elaine's lamp? Didn't the car show up before Elaine left the hospital? This doesn't add up. The live ended abruptly, deleted, but it had already been recorded. Screen captured, shared. By lunchtime, a second video began circulating. It was Marjorie, my mother, speaking at her church's youth group. The clip picked up mid-sentence. "After all I gave her, after all I sacrificed, my daughter turned on me. Dragged us into court. That's who she's become." A few people clapped. Not many. And in that silence between sparse applause, something heavy landed. People were watching now, not because they were nosy, but because they were beginning to see behind the mask. And for a family like mine, one that thrived on image, that was worse than a lawsuit. Later that evening, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her name was Rachel, an old Pilates classmate of Savannah's. "Hey," she wrote, "she used to tell us you were unstable, that you made things up for attention. I believed it then, but now, I'm not so sure. I'm sorry." I didn't reply right away, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed a moment to feel what that meant. To have someone undo even a sliver of the damage. The truth doesn't always fix everything, but sometimes it rearranges the furniture in people's minds just enough to let doubt move in. That weekend, Savannah's follower count dropped by 2,000. Marjorie's friends stopped liking her posts, and the tide finally shifted. The courthouse smelled like old paper and rain. It was April in Portland, wet in a way that seeped through your coat and into your bones. I met Desmond on the steps. He wore his usual navy wool overcoat and held 2 coffees, one of which he handed me without a word. We didn't speak much on the way in. There was nothing left to rehearse. Inside the courtroom, Marjorie sat at the defendant's table, spine straight, pearl necklace perfectly aligned. Savannah was beside her, tapping her phone like she was waiting for a brunch reservation. Neither of them looked at me. I didn't expect them to. The judge entered. We all stood. Proceedings began. Desmond opened with a statement so clean, so cold, it left no room for sentiment. "This case is about a pattern of financial deception, identity exploitation, and emotional abuse, orchestrated under the guise of family." Then he began the walkthrough. Page by page, he showed the hospital documents, highlighted signatures, time-stamped authorization forms. He pulled up the Tesla registration, where my name had been listed as co-owner without my consent. The credit union loan, signed from an IP address linked to Marjorie's home Wi-Fi. The screenshots from Savannah's live stream, with my lamp glowing in the background. The DMV listing. The text messages. The group chat. Each click of his remote control sounded louder than the last. And finally, he brought out the written statement from Lacey Cordell, Savannah's ex-girlfriend. Signed, dated, notarized. Desmond read it aloud. Savannah used Elaine's name because her credit was better. She told me, "Elaine never checks anything. It's not stealing if she doesn't find out." A rustle moved through the courtroom. Marjorie turned her head slightly. Savannah didn't flinch. Then it was my turn. I stood. No script. No dramatics. "I didn't come here because I enjoy this," I said. "I came here because they left me in a hospital bed and used my name like a checkbook. They took out loans, transferred property, bought a car. And when I woke up, alone, they expected me to stay silent." I paused. They always said family comes first. I just didn't know that meant before me. The judge nodded, requested a short recess. When we returned, the verdict came quickly, in favor of the plaintiff, Elaine Harper. Marjorie and Savannah were ordered to repay $74,000 in damages, and all assets tied to my name were frozen, pending transfer back to my control. The gavel dropped like a punctuation mark. Marjorie gasped, barely audible. Savannah leaned in toward her and whispered something, then turned to me with eyes like cut glass. She hissed, "You ruined us." I looked at her fully for the first time that day. "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourselves." And then I walked out. No applause, no satisfaction, just the cool Portland air pressing against my face as I stepped back onto the sidewalk. Still stitched, still healing, but finally intact. That night, back at Becca's, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't toast to victory or post anything online. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, curled up on her couch, and stared at the ceiling fan as it spun slowly overhead. My body still ached, but it was quieter now, like the pain had finally accepted it didn't run the show. My phone buzzed. A new Facebook post from Marjorie. It was long, rambling, laced with guilt masked as righteousness. We raised her. We supported her. We gave, and now she sues her own blood for attention. I won't say more, but the truth always finds its way. The comments were split. Some came to her defense. "She's your daughter. How could she do this to you?" But more, far more, asked questions. One comment simply posted a link to the court summary. Another, "This is what gaslighting looks like." I didn't reply. Not then. Not ever. Days passed. I moved into a small walk-up apartment in a quiet part of Northeast Portland. It wasn't much, just a kitchen with mismatched tiles, a bedroom that barely fit the bed, but it was mine. No co-signers, no backup keys, no just in case. I bought a keypad lock and installed it myself, following a YouTube tutorial step by step. When the screen blinked green and accepted my custom code, I whispered aloud, "No keys to copy." I unpacked slowly. One night, I opened a box labeled Misc. Inside was a replica of the lamp Savannah had taken from our dorm room. I'd ordered it months ago without thinking. Same color, same slanted shade. I placed it on the new desk near the window where morning light would hit just right. Next to it, I set the unopened letter from Marjorie, the one that arrived 3 days after the verdict. Pale yellow envelope, no return address. My name in handwriting I hadn't seen since high school. Slanted to the right, every letter perfectly curved like it was trying too hard to seem calm. I didn't open it right away. I poured a cup of coffee, let the sun move across the floor. Then I sat at the table, slid my finger under the seal, and unfolded the single page. There was no greeting, no apology, just the first line. "You always needed too much." Every sentence that followed felt rehearsed, like a script she'd practiced her whole life. "You were born already wanting more than I could give." Savannah didn't cry as much. Some days I asked myself what I'd done wrong. Maybe I would have been better off with one daughter. I read every word, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to remember, not just what they'd done, but who they'd chosen to be. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into a file labeled, "For when I forget." Not for revenge, not for proof, just for memory. A week later, my Uncle Dennis called. Marjorie's brother, the one who always stayed quiet. He said, "I read the filings. I heard what she wrote. I want you to know, some of us saw it. We just didn't speak up." I didn't thank him. I just said, "You should have." There was a long pause. Then, "You're right. I'm sorry." And oddly, that did more for me than the letter ever could. That night, I walked out onto the porch of my new home with a cup of tea in hand. No family waiting behind the door. No chaos humming in the background. Just the quiet sound of a city exhaling after rain. I looked up at the sky, clear for once. The kind of sky that doesn't promise answers, but doesn't ask you to hide either. They took my money. They took my name. They took my silence. But they never took my voice. I just hadn't used it until now.